Hello everybody. Over beside me, right here, has been a nighttime buddy of mine for a while now. This is an Explore Scientific FirstLight 80mm Refractor mounted on a Twilight Nano mount. It's a very nice telescope. Now if you look at Explore Scientific's website, they have a lot of ratings on this, and they rate it at about 4.5 stars. Well, some people pay a lot of attention to online ratings on a manufacturer's website. They're like, oh, that's good. Other people are like, yeah, right. My rating for it is I'm going to put it right around 4.5 stars. This is actually a nice telescope, provided that you use it within the intended parameters they expect you to use it in. Let's get into that right now. So this telescope, it's been, like I said, my nighttime buddy for a while, and I think it's a pretty nice telescope. Again, provided that you use it the way the manufacturer has kind of set it up from the factory to use it as. What do I mean by that? Well, it comes with a 25mm Plössl eyepiece, and we're going to talk about that later. It's a mirror diagonal, so it's a telescope set up for nighttime use. This is a standard astronomical diagonal here. It's the telescope optical tube is 640 millimeters in focal length. So that makes it, in terms of focal ratio, it's an f8 telescope. It does have chromatic aberration, since we're dealing with a 2-element objective lens. And it's the typical crown and flint glass that comes standard with refractor telescopes, unless you start paying a lot more money to go to the fancier, glass types. But this works pretty well, provided again you keep it at lower magnification. So with this 25mm eyepiece, you get beautiful views of the moon. Jupiter and its 4 Galilean moons are presented quite nicely in this telescope's field. And I find it nice to look at Venus as well. Right now we've got the planet Venus is in its half phase. This is July of 2026. So you're looking at about a Venus it looks like a real tiny half a moon right now. And the telescope is kind of overwhelmed by the glare, since Venus right now is sitting at a magnitude of about -4, so it's very bright. However, you can put a neutral density filter in the back of the eyepiece. There's threads here to mount a neutral density filter in there, and that cuts down the glare, so you can actually observe the disk. Very nice. What do I mean though, very nice, very small planet, of course, in this view. What do I mean though about the low power aspects of this? There's a tip when you buy a telescope like this, and you get a mount where instead of having slow motion controls, they give you a push-pull control to be able to steer it, so it's alt-azimuth, steer it around by moving it. That suggests keep this scope at low power. And if you do, I've used this quite satisfactorily with the 25mm eyepiece they supply, and it's the only eyepiece that it comes with. I've used 20mm eyepieces in here. I've got a 20mm orthoscopic. It presents a very nice view. 32mm Plössl, very nice wide angle views with this. So this works out very well. Once you start going to shorter focal length eyepieces to get more magnification, so you start getting down to 15, 12, 10, 7, you're starting to see so much chromatic aberration, and unfortunately in an f8 tube it's there. It starts encroaching upon your enjoyment of the views. So as it's set up, it's not really a high magnification telescope. Keep the magnification down, and I find this to be very enjoyable. The mount is solid. It does vibrate a little bit, but with this standard 25mm eyepiece, this Plossl, it dampens out in about 3 seconds, so it's 3 to 4 seconds, so it's quite satisfactory. For fine movement, I grab the telescope tube back here by this plastic shaft, and I just move it around and let it go. And the vibrations dampen out 3.5, 4 seconds. So that's quite fine. So yes, when you consider that this telescope sits in that range of prices between $100 and $150, this is not just a satisfactory telescope. I find it to be quite a nice telescope. And this is something that I do take out. I have better telescopes, but I take this one out too and use it quite frequently. It's just nice. One of the features on here that I think is very thoughtful is the front of the dew shield has this padded plastic bumper up on the front. Now if you're moving this in and out of an apartment or your front or back door, and you're moving the tripod through the doorway, and you bump the front of the tube, fear not, unless you really hit it hard, this is going to absorb the shock quite well. So I think that this is actually a real nice design touch that shows that Explore Scientific is really thinking about the product and its usefulness in real-term use. This is actually a nice touch. So yes, the FirstLight 80mm Refractor telescope, very nice product. One weakness in here, and it's not the mount, but this is just because of costs. This clamshell tube clamp that fastens onto the mount, this is a plastic tube clamp, and they use 2 bolts to go onto a metal Vixen dovetail rail. And at that point where those bolts are going into plastic, I think this is where some of the vibration issues exist. This becomes much more of a solid telescope, and you get a more solid view if you put metal tube rings on this. So you've got all metal clamp, and you go with a heavier, sturdier tripod, like an example is Explore Scientific's Twilight 1. This is actually mates very well. If you want to explore using this telescope at higher magnifications, if you're buying the kit and you're considering it, you haven't bought it yet, look at the package that comes with the Twilight 1. I think it actually supports the telescope a little bit better for using higher magnifications than this. However, this is quite good if you're willing to just have, views of the moon, views of Jupiter, and seeing its 4 Galilean satellites around it. This is the perfect scope. It'll show you Saturn's rings, and as I say, with using a neutral density type of filter to cut down on the glare, put it up, mount it into the eyepiece. You can look at Venus right now, Venus is at a half phase. It's going to start growing larger in the sky, and also going into its crescent phase as it gets closer to the Earth. A telescope like this is going to present some really nice views of Venus going into its crescent phase. So check this out. For a telescope that sits in that price range between $100 and $150, I think this is one of the better purchases out there. It's a very good telescope. It's a good buy. Let's take a look closer now at this eyepiece that they supply with it. Okay, so we're going to take a close-up look at this kit eyepiece. They call it a superplasel, 25mm, multi-coated. I don't call it a superplasel. I'm not sure what superplasels were. That actually was an eyepiece at one time. I think Meade sold them. There may have been some others that sold them, but I'm not sure. I have really no idea how a superplasel compared to a regular plasel. But this plasel, I say, is an okay plasel. It's pretty decent. Some kit eyepieces that come with telescopes, you use them a couple of times and you toss them in the junk drawer, kind of like, and it's like, well, whatever. This one is actually good enough that I'm keeping it in with my regular eyepieces for use, occasionally at least. So anyway, this one is extremely light. The barrel is probably almost entirely plastic, except for the back here. This part of the eyepiece barrel is metal. Nicely blackened inside. There's a little bit of a shine on it, but the lighting here emphasizes that shine. It's more than it is. Now, the one feature of this that I'm a little bit, I think is positive, I'm not really sure myself, but I think it's a positive, is the barrel here is smooth. Here's another plasel eyepiece. This was an Orion 25mm plasel. Most eyepieces these days have this undercut in the barrel, which is a safety undercut. You tighten down the clamp screw, and on a lot of focusers there's a brass band that tightens down around the eyepiece and it holds it really snug. The problem is when you release that band, sometimes it catches on this undercut, and then you're pulling it out and you're fiddling with everything, trying to loosen up the screw and jiggle the eyepiece loose, and there's a chance of dropping them. So in theory, I get the idea of why they have those undercuts, but I've in real life gotten more feeling like the smooth barrel is actually a better way to go. So I'm kind of go both ways on that. I'm undecided, but I like this smooth barrel. It makes pulling this out of an eyepiece holder much easier. It's just positive. You release the screw, pull this out, and you're done. So yes, very nice. Something else that I like about this eyepiece, and it's kind of weird when I first noticed it, I wasn't sure about this, is that the eye lens group in the front is very deeply recessed. You can kind of see it on this video. The lenses are deep inside there. If I stick a Q-tip down here, a cotton swab, it's not a Q-tip brand, and I measure, the eye lens group is this far from the edge of the barrel. Well, I wasn't sure about that at first until I really started using this. With plasel eyepieces, the eye relief tends to get longer as the eyepiece focal length gets longer. So with a plasel, it's 25mm. Your eye is a little ways away from the lens group in the front. And sometimes that can cause you to, kind of, your head is moving and you're kind of moving in and out of the cone of light that's coming out of the eyepiece, the exit pupil. You kind of move your eye around and you can lose the exit pupil, and then you lose your view. Well, with this, because that eye lens group is so far recessed into the barrel, your eye kind of self-centers looking through here, and you pick up the view. And you tend to hold, at least I do, I tend to hold my eye a little bit more centered in the eyepiece with this. So some people might not like that. If you're an eyeglass wearer, you probably won't be happy with that. But if you don't need to use eyeglasses to look through your telescope, this might actually be a positive feature. I find that it is myself. So overall, I think this is a nice eyepiece, nicely made. It's plastic, but it doesn't feel flimsy. It's lightweight, but again, not flimsy feeling, not cheap. So yes, this is good. The views are reasonably sharp. I like it. Now let's take a look. When I say this is a lightweight eyepiece, well, let's just see how light it is. I'm going to weigh it. So we're going to weigh these eyepieces. I've got a couple of others here. So let's let the scale zero out. There we go. We've got it zeroed out. First of all, our subject eyepiece, this superplossil. 59 grams. This is light for an eyepiece. It's probably, for its size, the lightest eyepiece I have. And so here comes that point to illustrate. Here's the Orion plossil. This is a combination of metal and plastic. That's 79 grams. Quite a bit heavier. Now I have a 25 millimeter Kellner eyepiece here. This Kellner is quite a bit smaller than the eyepiece that came with the FirstLight telescope. This little Kellner is 77 grams. So this Kellner is, I'm pretty certain everything in this barrel is metal, or at least most everything. And it weighs quite a bit more than the supplied eyepiece that came with the FirstLight telescope at 59 grams. So it's a lightweight optic, but it's actually, I find it to be a pretty good optic. The only concern I might have is that deep recess of the front elements. For me it works okay, but I can see this being a problem for eyeglass wearers. If you are nearsighted or farsighted and you're using eyeglasses for that, remove your eyeglasses when you're using the telescope. The telescope will accommodate your focus adjustments there, so go without your glasses. If you have astigmatism, well, if it's mild astigmatism, you can probably get away without using your glasses, but if your astigmatism is fairly strong, then yeah, you'll need to wear glasses, and this eyepiece will be a problem for you. So anyway, let's look at some photos I took with this telescope and eyepiece combination. And there's a couple of photos in here that I used a 32 millimeter plossil. And I just held up my cell phone up to the exit pupil and took a shot. So let's take a look at them. So here are some photos I've taken with this telescope. Here's the eyepiece, the standard eyepiece illustrated. And now take a look at these photographs of the moon. Here's a photograph of Jupiter, and you could make out 3 of the 4 Galilean moons. I think one of the moons was probably behind the planet. The camera really couldn't focus on it. It's just too small, so it's a little bit blurry, but you get the picture. With the standard eyepiece, a view of Jupiter is going to be quite small. Now, I also took some photos with a 32mm eyepiece that I had. When you first take the telescope out of the box, you're going to be greeted with several stickers that offer this solar warning. When you're outside with the telescope in daytime, don't point it at the sun. And the reason I have it shown here is that here are some daytime photos of the moon, again taken with the standard 25mm eyepiece. This was in the morning. The sun was nowhere near the frame, and I was under a roof cover so that there was no chance I was going to point this telescope towards the sun. So this is what you can do with it in daytime as well. Okay, so in conclusion, what do I think of this telescope? Keep in mind it's an Explore Scientific FirstLight series device. So it's intended for the beginner amateur astronomer, a young person perhaps getting their first telescope. Or perhaps someone who's older who would like just something general use, toss in the car, take out in the last minute to view the sky, or just a more casual use instrument. This is a fine telescope for its price range. This is hard to beat. The objective lens up in front is a 2-element crown and flint glass assembly. It's a cemented doublet. It appears to be in pretty good condition, gives sharp views. The eyepiece in the back, the Plössl 25mm, is also a nice eyepiece. I found it to be pretty decent. Along the tube, it's well made, it's nice. The focuser assembly towards the back is a plastic assembly, but it's actually one of the better plastic focusers out there. The metal adjustments for draw tube tension, the lock screw you see at the top, they're all threaded into inserts, metal inserts in plastic. So it's a solid, well-made assembly. The focusing mechanism itself, the rack and pinion gearing, appears to be in good shape, nice and smooth. The plastic extension on the draw tube, that I'm a little bit concerned about, because the locking screws that tighten down to the diagonal, those screws are set into plastic, so you don't want to over-tighten this. I don't know how long those threads would last if you really cranked on them. And it's the same way with the supplied diagonal. That eyepiece locking screw is in plastic threads. So yeah, just be careful with that. Usually people replace these starter diagonals anyway, but just be careful with it and it'll be fine. So anyway, this is a good telescope. It's something to get out and enjoy the night sky with. Okay, well that's my review of this Explore Scientific FirstLight telescope. I'd like to encourage you to go out with whatever you have, take a look at the night sky and enjoy the views. Okay, take it easy and have a good day. Bye now.